Hey guys, this video is going to be on the English Friendly Japan playlist, but it's not really about being English friendly as much as it is about companies being foreigner friendly. We've sort of touched on this a little bit before, but just a couple of examples that have popped up. One is the Romaji, the Roman writing that is sometimes used around Japan, can be really useful for people who can understand a little bit of Japanese but maybe can't read Japanese. So I'll give you an example. Is place names is a good example. Often on signs in big cities in Japan, they often have signs where they'll have the kanji, the name of the place written in kanji, and then underneath it they'll have the name of the place written in Romaji, in Roman writing. And it's really useful because Japanese people can read it too. I mean, of course they can read the kanji as well, but they can read it too. Everybody can read it. So people from any country speaking any language, really, if it's in Romaji, most people can read the name. So, you know, if you're wanting to go to Toyota City and you see a sign with Toyota written on it, you know, most people can read that, which is extremely useful for foreigners, of course, for finding your way around. And if you go to small towns and small places, often they don't have the Romaji, they just have the kanji. So again, I just want to remind ourselves that, of course, in Japan the language is Japanese, and occasionally I get somebody complaining about these videos that, you know, why should Japanese people speak English? I never say Japanese people should speak English. I never say Japan should be English friendly. In Japan the language is Japanese, and if you come to Japan and you're going to be here long term, then you should be speaking Japanese. It's not about that. It's just about recognising the reality of what it is like here, so that when people come here for a holiday, they know what to expect. So, because not everybody that comes to Japan for a holiday can read and write Japanese and speak Japanese. So that's why this playlist is just to help those people know what they're up for when they come. So a couple of examples of this as well as the place names. The other one is menus. Sometimes family restaurants, traditional restaurants not so much, but sometimes family restaurants will have on the menu they'll have Japanese, and then underneath the Japanese sometimes they'll have Romaji. And you've actually seen that on the food and eating playlist. We've seen a couple of examples of that, and actually I think on the English Friendly playlist as well, we've shown you examples of that where some family restaurants have the Romaji. And again, really useful because everybody can read it. So it doesn't matter what language you speak. If it's in Romaji, it's very useful for people. So, and interestingly, there's a McDonald's. The McDonald's menu changes like it does in every country, I think. You know, you have the menu, and then they change the menu and bring in some new things and take out some other things. And usually the McDonald's menus have Romaji, and which is very useful. And so what you actually got is the word is written in Japanese, but they've used Romaji. So they'll use Roman writing, and they'll write hamburger cheese. Fabulous. So even if your Japanese is really low level, if you can read that, you know what it is, don't you? And very useful, particularly for menus like that, like Western style menus, where usually you can understand it, you know. Fried potato, you know, fabulous, you know what that is. Coca-Cola, haha, you know. So for foreigners, very useful, very useful. And usually the McDonald's menu has Japanese and Romaji, Roman writing. And interestingly, they've just brought out their latest menu, and it's only Japanese. There's no Romaji at all, which, if it was always like that, wouldn't be so surprising. But what is surprising is that usually it does have Roman writing, and now it doesn't, which is a bit surprising. It's like a step backwards, isn't it? You know, obviously it just means that whoever it is that designs the McDonald's menus, you know, just didn't sort of think about the Romaji this time or something. Hard to know why, but sort of a step backwards. So basically it means now if you go to McDonald's with the current menu, if you go to McDonald's, you have to be able to read Japanese to be able to read the menu, which is a bit... Of course, they still have pictures on the menu, so you can sort of take a guess at what something is and point to it, I guess. But yeah, for people who can't read Japanese, McDonald's isn't the place for you to be at the moment. not until they change the menu again, maybe next time they'll have Romaji. Another interesting one was occasionally we use the train line that actually runs to the airport, the international airport that's near our city, and usually on that train schedule, what do they call it? The map, you know, the map that shows all the train lines, all the train stations, and usually that is also in Romaji, and you find that places like Tokyo. If you go into Tokyo, into the train station and look up on the wall, there's the sort of the spaghetti image of all the train lines, which are fairly complicated as it is. But usually what they have is all the different train stations, and the train stations will have kanji and Romaji, the Roman writing, so foreigners can read it. You know, if you want to go to Kanazawa, you can, Kanazawa, there it is, you can read it. And usually in the big cities, they have that. Again, small towns, usually they won't, it'll just be Japanese. And place names are difficult because place names are usually in kanji. So you have to have a fairly good level of reading Japanese to be able to read place names usually. So the Romaji is pretty useful for foreigners that are visiting, you know. And usually the big cities have it, small ones usually don't. But this train line that goes to the international airport usually had it. So at the stations on that line, the stations usually had the names of all the different stations written in Romaji. And they've just upgraded the map with a new one. Updated. I think the old one was just looking a bit tired and tatty or something, so they decided to renew it with a new one. And the new one doesn't have Romaji, and they've just gone with just the kanji again. So same as what the McDonald's did, which is it's strange. It seems very strange. Again, you know, in Japan the language is Japanese, so if you go to a place and everyth's in Japanese, well, it's the way it is, isn't it? You know, nobody should be surprised by that. But what's surprising at these two examples with McDonald's and with the train line is that they had Romaji. You know, they had these things in Romaji, in the Roman writing, and then when they did the new version, they didn't have Romaji on it, which is sort of a step backwards. So yeah, both those examples, sort of surprising, you know. McDonald's being a big international company, and obviously McDonald's is fairly popular with foreigners, and an international train line, or the train line, sorry, that's not right, the train line going to the international airport, you would think, you know, would be a reasonable place to have the Romaji again, and they didn't. So it's, yeah. And again, this isn't a complaint or a criticism or anything else. This is just information for people who might be visiting Japan, that the reality is that, you know, not only is a goodly proportion of the country not English friendly, you know, and if you're coming from Europe and places like that where you're used to most countries being fairly sort of cosmopolitan and international and English friendly, not only is most of the country not English friendly, but it's also not sort of foreigner friendly, because, you know, this extends past English, doesn't it? You know, all you guys that speak 2 or 3 languages, and people who have another language as their first language, it's sort of useful for everybody. You know, if you write something in Romaji, there's sort of people all around the world can read it, really. Particularly place names. I think more important than the McDonald's menu is the train line, and the place names is really important. You know, write them in kanji, and the only people who can read them are Japanese people and people with a very high level of Japanese reading, and the foreigners have no chance. Whereas write it in Romaji and everybody can read it. So it's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting, and people who've travelled around Europe will know that, you know, that's one good thing about Europe, is that pretty well anywhere you travel in Europe, you'll see all the signs written in Romaji. So it doesn't matter if you can't speak the local language, at least you can see on the sign what town you're in, you know, what train station you've just arrived at. So it's interesting. It's interesting that they're not really. It just goes to show, you know, the foreigners people often ask, you know, do they write that? Do they do that because of the foreigners, or do they do that because of the foreigners? The foreigners really don't enter into it too much. You know, there's a couple of groups within the government that are keen to encourage tourism, but they're one isolated group, and everybody else doesn't really care that much. Okay, not a complaint, it's just an observation. It's just the way it is, you know. Foreigners don't figure in the overall consciousness of what's going on. So anyway, information only. It's information only. Please don't give me a lecture about, you know, why should Japanese people speak English. Nobody has ever said that on this channel. We never say that. Nobody should speak English in Japan. The language in Japan is Japanese. This is purely information only, observation only. More videos, more observations, and more videos coming soon.